You left everything to the cleaning lady? My daughter Jennifer's voice cracked like a whip through the intensive care unit at Vanderbilt Medical Center, and honey, every single nurse on that floor stopped what they were doing to stare. I was laying there with tubes coming out of every part of me, barely able to keep my eyes open after my third heart attack in 2 weeks, and this woman, my own flesh and blood, was standing over my hospital bed, waving my last will and testament like it was on fire. The heart monitor started beeping faster, and I could feel my chest getting tight again, but y'all, what happened next was about to change everything I thought I knew about family, love, and what really matters when you staring death right in the face. Let me back up just a little bit, sweetie, because you need to understand how we got to this moment. 3 days earlier, I'd been sitting in my little kitchen in East Nashville, the same kitchen where I packed thousands of school lunches for Jennifer and her brother Michael over the years, when that crushing pain hit my chest like a freight train. I managed to call 911 before everything went black, and when I woke up, there was Jennifer, hovering over me with this look on her face. Not worry, not love, but something that made my stomach turn even through all that morphine. "Mama," she said, and her voice had this edge to it that I'd never heard before, "we need to talk about your affairs, just in case." Just in case, like she was already planning my funeral. Now, honey, I'd been a high school English teacher for 37 years before I retired, and I could spot manipulation from a mile away. But this was my daughter, the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager I'd driven to every volleyball practice and debate tournament, the woman I co-signed a car loan for just 2 years ago when her credit was shot. I squeezed her hand and whispered, "Baby girl, everything's gonna be fine. Mama's tougher than she looks." But Jennifer didn't squeeze back. Instead, she pulled her hand away and said, "I found your will in the desk drawer. We need to make sure it's updated." Y'all, something cold ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. "You went through my desk?" I asked, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. Jennifer's face got red, the way it used to when she was 7 years old and got caught taking cookies before dinner. "Mama, I was just trying to help. I needed to find your insurance papers and your social security card. But this will? When did you write this thing?" She was holding that manila envelope like it might bite her, and I could see her hands were actually shaking. "The thing is, sweetie, I rewritten that will just 6 months ago, right after my 72nd birthday." I've been thinking a lot about legacy and what really mattered, especially after spending so much time with Rosa Martinez, the most wonderful woman who'd been cleaning my house and helping me with grocery shopping for the past 3 years. Rosa was 58, had immigrated from El Salvador 20 years ago, worked 3 jobs to put her 2 boys through college, and had never once complained about anything, not even when I accidentally put salt in her coffee instead of sugar that one morning when my arthritis was acting up. That woman had more grace and kindness in her pinky finger than most people have in their whole bodies. But I didn't explain any of that to Jennifer right then because, frankly, honey, I was tired and scared, and those machines were making so much noise I could barely think straight. "We'll talk about it later, baby," I whispered, closing my eyes. Jennifer made this huffing sound, the same sound she used to make when I wouldn't let her sit up past her bedtime, and I heard her heels clicking as she walked away from my bed. The next morning, I woke up to find not just Jennifer, but my son Michael standing at the foot of my bed, both of them with their arms crossed and these serious expressions that reminded me way too much of parent-teacher conferences I used to have with difficult parents. "Morning, Mama," Michael said, but his voice was flat as yesterday's Coca-Cola. "We've been talking." Oh, Lord, I thought. Here we go. When those two started sentences with "we've been talking," it usually meant they'd decided something about my life without asking me first. "Talking about what, honey?" I asked, even though I already knew exactly what they'd been discussing. "The will. My will. The will that was apparently causing more drama than a reality TV show." Jennifer stepped forward and pulled that manila envelope out of her purse like it was presenting evidence in court. "Mama, we need to discuss this Rosa situation." The way she said situation made it sound like Rosa was some kind of disease I'd caught. Before I tell you what happened next, and honey, this part is going to absolutely shock you. If you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. You know I get so excited when I see y'all in the comments. Speaking of which, what state are you calling home right now? Drop it down below. And sweetie, tell me, have you ever had family treat you like your own decisions didn't matter? Because your stories help me know I'm not alone in this crazy world. Now let me tell you what I discovered next, because what they did was about to backfire in the most beautiful way. Rosa situation, I repeated, and I could feel my blood pressure rising even through all those medications they had me on. What exactly do you mean by that? Michael stepped closer to the bed and he had this patronizing smile that made me want to throw my water cup at his head. Mama, we understand you're fond of your housekeeper, but leaving her the house and most of your savings it's not appropriate. She's taking advantage of you. Y'all, I had to bite my tongue so hard I'm surprised it didn't start bleeding. Taking advantage of me? This woman who insisted on cleaning my baseboards every week even though I told her it wasn't necessary? The woman who brought me homemade tamales every Christmas and refused to let me pay her extra for them? The woman who noticed I was losing weight before my own children did and started bringing me containers of her famous chicken and rice soup? That woman had more grace and kindness in her pinky finger than most people have in their whole bodies. How exactly is Rosa taking advantage of me? I asked, and my voice was getting stronger despite the tubes and wires. Jennifer sat down in the visitor's chair with this dramatic sigh. Mama, think about it logically. She's been working for you for 3 years. She probably saw the will when she was cleaning and convinced you to change it. These people know how to manipulate. Elder. Stop right there. The words came out sharper than I meant them to, but honey, I was done being polite. These people? What exactly do you mean by these people, Jennifer Marie? Using her full name like she was 12 years old again, because apparently that's exactly how she was acting. My daughter's face got red as a tomato and she started stammering something about not meaning anything by it, but Michael jumped in with his lawyer voice. Did I mention he's an attorney? Of course he is. What Jennifer means, Mama, is that home care workers often take advantage of lonely elderly people. It's actually quite common. They befriend their clients, gain their trust, and then convince them to change their wills. There are laws about this kind of thing. He said it so matter-of-factly like he was explaining why grass is green. And y'all, I could feel my heart starting to pound again. Lonely elderly people, I whispered, and y'all, my voice broke right in half. Some pathetic old woman who's so desperate for company that she'd give her life savings to the first person who shows her a little kindness? The heart monitor started beeping faster, and a nurse appeared at the doorway, checking to see if everything was okay. I waved her away because this conversation was far from over. Jennifer leaned forward and tried to take my hand again. Mama, we didn't mean it like that. We just think you're not thinking clearly right now. The medications, the stress of being in the hospital, your age. My age. There it was, the real issue. Not Rosa, not manipulation, not anything else. My age. Like hitting 72 had somehow erased 40 years of teaching, of making important decisions, of raising 2 children by myself after their father died in that car accident when they were just teenagers. Let me tell you something about Rosa Martinez, I said, and my voice was getting stronger with every word. That woman has never once asked me for anything, not once. When I fell in my kitchen last winter and couldn't get up, Rosa found me when she came to clean on Tuesday morning. She called 911, rode with me in the ambulance, and stayed in the emergency room for 6 hours until you 2 finally showed up. When I was recovering from hip surgery, she came every single day for 2 weeks, not to clean, just to check on me. She brought groceries, cooked meals, helped me shower when I was too proud to ask anyone else. Michael crossed his arms tighter. Mama, that's all very nice, but it doesn't justify. I'm not finished talking. The teacher voice came out then, the one that had silenced thousands of routed teenagers over the years, and both my children took a step back. When Rose's youngest son graduated from Tennessee State with his engineering degree, you know what she did? She invited me to the graduation. Me, not as her employer, but as her friend. I sat in that auditorium and cried when they called his name because I'd watched that boy grow up through Rosa's stories. I'd helped her practice his spelling words in English when he was struggling in elementary school. I'd celebrated when he made the honor roll and worried with her when he got sick with pneumonia his sophomore year of high school. The room got quiet, except for the constant beeping of machines and the distant sound of hospital life continuing outside my door. Jennifer was staring at her hands, and Michael was looking everywhere except at me. Finally, Jennifer spoke up, and her voice was smaller than before. "Mama, we just don't understand why you'd leave everything to someone who's not family." And there it was, y'all, the heart of the whole thing. Not family. Like family was determined by blood instead of love, instead of choice, instead of who shows up when you need them most. I closed my eyes and took the deepest breath those tubes would allow me, because what I was about to tell them was going to change everything. Rosa is more family to me than either of you have been in the past 5 years, I said quietly. When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed something, not because it was my birthday or Christmas, but just because you wanted to hear my voice. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. When was the last time either of you visited me when you weren't asking for money or needing me to babysit or wanting to store something in my garage? Michael's face was getting red now, too. "Mama, that's not fair. We both have busy lives, careers, families." Rosa has 3 jobs and still finds time to call me every evening to make sure I've taken my medications. My voice was getting stronger, more clear, like all those years of projecting to the back of the classroom were coming back to me. When I mentioned that I was thinking about getting a cat for company, Rosa spent her day off driving me to 3 different animal shelters until we found Precious. When I was worried about learning how to use my new smartphone, Rosa sat with me for 2 hours, showing me how to text and take pictures. When I wanted to plant a vegetable garden but couldn't kneel down to dig anymore, Rosa brought her nephew over with shovels, and they spent an entire Saturday preparing the soil. Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears that she was trying to wipe away without me noticing. But I noticed everything, honey. I'd been a teacher for almost 38 years. "Mama," she whispered, "I love you." "I know you do, baby girl. But love isn't just a feeling. Love is showing up. Love is paying attention. Love is caring enough to know that I've been struggling with loneliness since your daddy died 12 years ago and doing something about it instead of just calling it getting old." I paused to let that sink in. Rosa knew I was having chest pains 3 weeks before this heart attack happened. She kept asking if I'd seen Dr. Patterson lately, kept offering to drive me to appointments. She was worried about me. Where were y'all? The answer hung in the air like smoke. They'd been busy. They'd been living their lives. They'd been taken for granted that Mama would always be there whenever they needed something, but never considering that Mama might need something too. Michael cleared his throat. "So you're really gonna leave the house to her? The house Daddy built with his own hands?" Oh, now we were bringing my dear departed husband into this, the man who'd worked construction for 23 years and spent every weekend for 2 years building our dream home board by board. The house where I'd raised these 2 ungrateful children, where I'd hosted every birthday party and Christmas morning and Easter dinner until they got too busy with their own families to come round regularly. Your daddy built that house as a home, not as an investment property, not as something to inherit and sell for profit. He built it to be lived in, to be loved in, to be a place where people take care of each other. Rosa understands that. When she waters my plants, she talks to them like they're old friends. When she dusts the mantelpiece, she always straightens that picture of you 2 at high school graduation and tells me how proud I should be of my babies. When she's mopping the kitchen floor, she hums old hymns the same way I used to when you were little. Y'all, I had to pause there because my voice was starting to crack with emotion. These weren't just words I was saying. They were memories, moments, the building blocks of what had become the most genuine friendship I'd had in years. Rosa sees that house the way your daddy would have wanted it to be seen, as a home, not a commodity. Jennifer stood up and started pacing around the small hospital room. But Mama, what about us? What about your grandchildren? Don't we deserve something? Deserve. There was that word again, like inheritance was something owed rather than something given out of love and gratitude. What you deserve, baby girl, is exactly what you've earned through your actions and choices. I kept my voice gentle but firm. And what Rosa deserves is exactly what she's earned through hers. The difference is she's earned it through 3 years of consistent kindness, attention, and genuine care. She's earned it by treating me like a person instead of a burden. She's earned it by including me in her life instead of just expecting me to fit into the corners of yours when convenient. The machines around my bed kept beeping their steady rhythm while my children stood there processing what I just said. Finally, Michael pulled out his phone. I think we should call Dr. Patterson and discuss your mental state. This decision doesn't make sense from any logical standpoint. My mental state, y'all, if I could have sat up in that bed, I would have. I've been making important decisions since before you were born, and I'll be making them until the day I die. Which, according to Dr. Patterson, might be sooner than any of us would like. The words came out harsher than I intended, but sometimes the truth needs to be said plainly. Both my children went very still. Jennifer stopped pacing, and Michael put his phone back in his pocket. Mama, Jennifer whispered, what do you mean? I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering the strength to explain what Dr. Patterson had told me the night before when they'd gotten the results of all my tests. My heart is tired, babies, really tired. The damage from these 3 attacks, plus the years of high blood pressure and stress, means I'm looking at maybe 6 months, maybe a year if I'm lucky and follow all the rules perfectly. The silence in that room was deafening. Finally, Michael sat down heavily in the other visitor chair. Mama, why didn't you tell us this yesterday? Because yesterday you were too busy arguing about my will to ask about my prognosis. The words hung in the air like a rebuke, which they were meant to be. You've been in and out of this hospital room for 3 days, and neither one of you has asked me if I'm scared, if I'm in pain, if there's anything I need, or how I'm feeling about facing the end of my life. The only thing you wanted to discuss is my will. Jennifer started crying harder this time, and she wasn't trying to hide it. Mama, I'm so sorry. We panicked when we saw that Rosa was getting everything. We thought maybe you were confused, or maybe she'd pressured you somehow. You never thought that I might have had good reasons for my decisions. You never thought that maybe, just maybe, your old mama still has enough sense left to know who's been there for her and who hasn't. I reached for the water cup on my bedside table, and my hands were shaking from more than just the medications. You want to know something else? Rosa doesn't even know she's in the wheel. I never told her. This isn't about her asking for anything or manipulating me. This is about me deciding that I want to leave my earthly possessions to someone who has treated me with dignity and respect instead of someone who thinks I'm too old to make my own decisions. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Mama, what can we do? How can we make this right? And y'all, that was the first question either one of them had asked that sounded like it came from love instead of greed. You can start by spending time with me while I'm still here to enjoy it. Not time trying to change my mind about the wheel, not time making plans for after I'm gone, but time just being my children. Time asking me about my life, my memories, my fears, my hopes for whatever time I have left.
Jennifer came over and sat on the edge of my hospital bed, careful not to disturb all the wires and tubes. She said, "Tell me about Rosa. Tell me why you love her so much." Honey, that's when everything started to change. Not dramatically, not like a movie where everyone hugs and cries and everything's perfect, but slowly, like a sunrise, something shifted in that hospital room. I started telling them about Rosa, really telling them, about how she'd noticed I was getting forgetful and started writing little reminding notes for me without making me feel stupid. About how she'd taught me to make her grandmother's salsa recipe and then pretended mine was just as good as hers when we both knew it wasn't even close. About how she'd helped me write Christmas cards last year when my arthritis was so bad I could barely hold a pen, and how she'd addressed every envelope in her beautiful handwriting and never once complained about the cramping in her own hands afterwards. I told them about the day I'd fallen in the shower and was too embarrassed to call for help, and how Rosa had found me still sitting on the bathroom floor 2 hours later, wrapped in towels and shivering. Instead of scolding me or making me feel foolish, she'd helped me get dressed, made me hot tea, and then gently suggested that maybe we should look into one of those medical alert buttons. She'd driven me to the medical supply store that very afternoon and helped me pick out the right one, then showed me how to wear it and test it until I felt confident. "She sounds wonderful," Jennifer said, and for the first time since this whole mess started, her voice sounded sincere instead of resentful. "She is wonderful," I agreed, "but more than that, she's been my friend when I desperately needed one. When you get to be my age, especially after losing your spouse, friendship becomes precious in a way that's hard to explain. It's not just about having someone to talk to. It's about having someone who sees you as you are now, not as who you used to be 20 years ago. Someone who doesn't treat your stories like interruptions or your concerns like silly worries." Michael leaned forward. "Mama, have we been treating you like that?" I considered lying, telling them what they wanted to hear, making everyone feel better. But I'd spent too many years as a teacher to start sugarcoating uncomfortable truths now. "Sometimes, honey, yes, sometimes you have. When I call to tell you about something that happened at the grocery store, I can hear the impatience in your voice, like you're waiting for me to get to the point so you can hang up and get back to your real life. When I mention that I'm worried about something, my car making a strange noise or a pain in my side or a news story that scared me, you dismiss it as me being dramatic or paranoid instead of just listening and acknowledging that my feelings are valid." Jennifer was nodding slowly. "I do that. I know I do that. When you called last month worried about that scam phone call, I just told you to hang up on them instead of talking about why it scared you so much. It scared me because I realize how vulnerable I am now, living alone, being older, not understanding all the new technology and tricks people use. But instead of helping me figure out how to protect myself or just sympathizing with how frightening it is to feel targeted, you made it sound like I was silly for worrying." Michael rubbed his face with both hands. "God, Mama, we've been terrible, haven't we?" "Not terrible, honey, just unpresent. Physically present sometimes, but emotionally absent." I reached for his hand, and this time he squeezed back immediately. "Rosa is present. When I tell her a story, she asks questions. When I share a memory, she wants to hear more details. When I'm worried about something, she helps me think through solutions or just sits with me while I worry until it passes." A nurse came in then to check my IV and take my vital signs, and we all sat quietly while she worked. After she left, Jennifer said, "Mama, I'd like to meet Rosa, really meet her, not just say hello when she's leaving after cleaning. I want to understand who she is and why she means so much to you." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. "But baby girl, you need to understand something. I'm not changing the wheel. Even if you meet Rosa and love her as much as I do, even if we spend every remaining day I have talking and laughing and being the family I've missed for so long, I'm not changing the wheel." Jennifer nodded. "I understand. And honestly, after hearing you talk about her, I think maybe you made the right choice. Maybe we didn't deserve to inherit what she's earned through actually being there for you." Y'all, I had to bite my lip to keep from crying right then, because that was exactly what I'd been hoping they would understand. Not that I didn't love them. I loved them more than life itself. But love and inheritance don't have to be the same thing.
That what you leave behind should go to the people who helped make your life worth living, not just the people who happen to share your DNA. But the story doesn't end there, sweetie, because the next morning brought a surprise that nobody saw coming. I was dozing when I heard familiar voices in the hallway outside my room. Rosa's melodic Spanish accent mixed with Jennifer's nervous chatter. My daughter had actually called Rosa, explained that I was in the hospital, and asked if she'd like to visit. Rosa, being Rosa, had immediately rearranged her entire day to come see me. When they walked into my room together, I could see Rosa had been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she was carrying a small bouquet of flowers. Not expensive roses from a florist, but wildflowers she'd probably picked from her own yard. She rushed to my bedside and took my hand in both of hers, speaking in rapid Spanish that I recognized as prayers, even though I couldn't understand all the words. "Señora Dorothy, why didn't you tell me you were sick?" she asked, switching to English. "I would have come sooner. I would have stayed with you." The genuine distress in her voice, the tears streaming down her face, the way she held my hand like she was afraid I might disappear. Y'all, this was not the behavior of someone who was manipulating me for money. This was the behavior of someone who truly cared. Jennifer had been watching this interaction carefully, and I could see the exact moment when she understood what I'd been trying to tell her. Rosa wasn't performing for an audience or trying to make a good impression on my daughter. She was just being herself, the same caring, genuine person she'd always been with me. "Rosa," I said gently, "I want you to meet my daughter Jennifer properly. Jennifer, this is Rosa Martinez, my very dear friend." Rosa turned to Jennifer with that warm smile that had brightened so many of my days. "Your mother talks about you all the time. She is so proud of you, of your work, of your children. She keeps pictures on her refrigerator and shows me every time the little ones do something new." I watched Jennifer's face change as Rosa spoke. She was realizing that this woman she'd seen as a threat, this woman she'd accused of manipulation, actually cared enough about me to listen to my endless grandmother stories and look at countless pictures of grandchildren she'd never met. "Rosa," Jennifer said carefully, "I owe you an apology. I said some things about you that were unfair and unkind, and I'm sorry." Rosa looked confused. "What things? I don't understand." Jennifer glanced at me, and I nodded slightly. This conversation needed to happen. "We were upset about Mama's will. We thought maybe you had influenced her decision to leave you the house and her savings." Y'all, Rosa's face went through about 6 different expressions in the space of 2 seconds. Confusion, shock, understanding, and then something that looked almost like hurt. "The will?" she whispered, looking back and forth between Jennifer and me. "Señora Dorothy, what will?" And that's when I realized that Rosa had no idea. None whatsoever. She'd been caring for me, befriending me, including me in her life, all without any knowledge that there might be financial benefit to her kindness. The look of genuine surprise on her face was so pure, so authentic, that even if Jennifer still harbored doubts, they would have evaporated in that moment. "Rosa, honey, sit down," I said, patting the side of the bed. "There's something I need to tell you." For the next 20 minutes, I explained everything: the will, my children's concerns, my decision, and the reasons behind it. Rosa listened without saying a word, her eyes getting bigger and bigger, her hand pressed over her mouth in shock. When I finished talking, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Señora Dorothy, I cannot accept this. The house, the money, it is too much. I am just your friend. Family should inherit, not friends." And honey, right there in that hospital room, with machines beeping and nurses rushing around in the hallway and the smell of antiseptic burning my nose, I heard the most beautiful thing anyone could have said. Rosa, who had just learned she was inheriting a house worth over $300,000 and savings accounts worth nearly $200,000 more, was trying to talk me out of giving it to her. She was more concerned about what was appropriate, what was right for my family, than she was excited about her unexpected windfall. "Rosa," I said, my voice getting stronger than it had been in days. "What makes someone family? Is it just sharing DNA, or is it sharing life?" She thought about that for a moment. "Sharing life," she said quietly. "Caring for each other. Being present for the good times and the bad." "Then you're more family to me than anyone in this room, and you've earned what I'm leaving you through 3 years of being family." I looked over at Jennifer, who was crying again, but these times were different tears. "Baby girl, do you understand now?" Jennifer nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand completely, Mama. And Rosa, I want you to know that I think Mama made exactly the right choice. You've been the daughter to her that I should have been, and I'm grateful, so grateful that she had you when she needed someone most." Rosa started crying then too, but she was smiling through her tears. "Señora Dorothy, I love you like my own mother. When I lost my mama 5 years ago, I thought that part of my heart would always be empty. But knowing you, caring for you, being cared for by you, it filled that space again. You gave me a gift I didn't even know I needed." Y'all, there wasn't a dry eye in that hospital room. Even Michael, who'd been quiet through most of this conversation, was reaching for tissues. But the most beautiful part was what happened next. Rosa turned to Jennifer and said, "I want to know about your mother when she was young. I want to hear stories about when you and your brother were children. I want to see pictures and learn about the woman she was before I knew her." And Jennifer, my sometimes difficult daughter who I'd been worried had lost touch with her heart completely, smiled the biggest smile I'd seen from her in years. "I would love that. And I want to hear about her life now from your perspective. I want to understand how she spends her days, what makes her laugh, what worries her, all the things I should have been paying attention to." That afternoon, something magical happened in my hospital room at Vanderbilt Medical Center. My daughter and the woman who had become like a daughter to me sat on either side of my bed and talked for 3 hours straight. Jennifer told Rosa about my years as a teacher, about the time I chaperoned a school trip to Washington, D.C., and ended up having to bail 2 students out of trouble with the Capitol Police for trying to sneak into restricted areas. She talked about how I used to stay up until midnight helping students with their college application essays, how she'd spent her own money on supplies for kids whose families couldn't afford them, how she'd attended more graduations and weddings of former students than anyone could count. Rosa told Jennifer about the woman I'd become in recent years, how I'd learned to use FaceTime so I could see her grandsons when they called from college, how I'd started a little neighborhood book club that met in my living room once a month, how I'd been volunteering at the animal shelter until my arthritis made it too hard to walk the dogs. She talked about my stubborn independence, my determination to keep learning new things, my habit of leaving encouraging notes for the mail carrier and the garbage collectors, Listening to them talk about me, really talk about me, with love and admiration and detailed knowledge of who I am as a person, was better than any medication they could have given me. For the first time since this whole ordeal started, I felt like Dorothy the person, instead of Dorothy the dying woman whose assets needed to be distributed. Michael joined the conversation eventually, sharing his own memories and asking Rosa questions about my daily routine, my health concerns, my social life. By evening, it felt like we were all family, not just by blood or by choice, but by genuine affection and shared love for each other. The next morning, Dr. Patterson came in with my discharge papers. "Mrs. Williams," he said, "I have to say, your vital signs have improved dramatically since yesterday. Your blood pressure is better, your heart rhythm is more stable, and you seem much more alert. Whatever's been happening in this room, keep it up." I knew exactly what had been happening. I'd been surrounded by love, real love, the kind that asks questions and pays attention and sees you for who you are, the kind that doesn't keep score or make demands or measure worth by convenience, the kind that shows up and stays and fights for your dignity even when you're too weak to fight for it yourself. 2 weeks later, I was back home in my little house in East Nashville. Rosa had taken a leave of absence from her other jobs to stay with me during my recovery, and Jennifer had arranged to work remotely so she could visit every day. Michael came by 3 or 4 times a week, usually bringing takeout for dinner and staying to watch old movies with me. But the most amazing thing was watching the friendship develop between Jennifer and Rosa. They'd started texting each other daily, sharing updates about my condition, but also just talking about their lives, their families, their hopes and worries. Rosa had started teaching Jennifer some of her mother's recipes, and Jennifer had helped Rosa set up a Facebook account so she could keep in touch with relatives in El Salvador more easily. One evening, about a month after I'd come home from the hospital, the 3 of us were sitting in my living room after dinner. Rosa was knitting. She'd been trying to teach me, but my hands were too shaky. And Jennifer was reading aloud from a novel we'd all chosen for our impromptu book club. I was just listening, watching these 2 women who had both become so precious to me, thinking about how strange and wonderful life could be. "Mama," Jennifer said during a pause in her reading, "I need to tell you something." My heart did a little skip because conversations that started with "I need to tell you something" usually meant trouble. "What is it, baby girl?" "I've been thinking a lot about the will and about what you said about earning inheritance through actions." She closed the book and looked directly at me. "I want to help you set up a trust for Rosa, something that will make sure she's taken care of even better than the current will provides. And I want to add a provision that if anything happens to Rosa, the house comes back to the family. But Mama, I want Rosa to have legal ownership of that house while she's alive, free and clear, so she never has to worry about anyone challenging your decision after you're gone." Y'all, I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a minute. Rosa looked up from her knitting with tears in her eyes. "Jennifer, that is too generous. I don't need—" "You do need it," Jennifer interrupted gently. "You need to know that your kindness to my mother has been seen and appreciated and will be rewarded properly. You need to know that you'll have security and stability and a home base for the rest of your life. And more than that, you deserve it." I reached for both of their hands. "Are you both sure about this? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Rosa, you'll legally own this house. And Jennifer, you're giving up any claim to your inheritance." Jennifer squeezed my hand. "Mama, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Rosa has been the daughter you needed. And now I want to be the daughter you deserve. That means supporting your decisions and making sure the people you love are protected." Rosa was crying openly now. I don't know what to say. My whole life, I worked so hard just to get by, to take care of my boys, to save a little for emergencies. I never dreamed. She paused, wiping her eyes. Senora Dorothy, are you sure this is what you want? Honey, this is exactly what I want. But more than that, it's what feels right, what feels like justice. I looked around my living room, at the family photos on the mantle, the Afghans my mother had crocheted draped over the furniture, the bookshelf full of novels I'd collected for 40 years of teaching. This house has been full of love, and it should continue to be full of love. You'll make sure of that. That weekend, Jennifer drove us all to her lawyer friend's office downtown. I'd been nervous for the trip. It was my first time out of the house for anything more complicated than a doctor's appointment since leaving the hospital, but Rosa had packed a cooler with snacks and Jennifer had brought pillows for the car, and they'd both fussed over me like I was made of spun glass. The lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Amanda, who Jennifer had known since law school, listened carefully as we explained what we wanted to do. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. Mrs. Williams, I have to say, in 20 years of practice, I've never had a family come in wanting to make sure an inheritance was more secure rather than trying to contest it. This is refreshing. My mama raised me right, Jennifer said, grinning at me. It just took me a while to remember what that meant. Amanda walked us through all the legal language, explaining how the trust would work, what protections it would provide, how the property transfer would be handled. Rosa asked intelligent questions. She was much sharper on financial matters than I'd realized, and Jennifer took careful notes on everything. But the most touching moment came when Amanda asked Rosa if she had any concerns or special requests. Rosa thought for a moment, then said, I want to make sure that Jennifer and Michael and their children always feel welcome in this house. I want them to know that even though I'll own it legally, it will always be their family home too. I want to have Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings and birthday parties, and I want Dorothy's grandchildren to have memories of this house the way she intended. Y'all, Jennifer started crying right there in that lawyer's office. Rosa, you're amazing. You're inheriting a house, and your first thought is about making sure we still feel like family? Because we are family. Different kinds of family, but family all the same. 6 weeks later, we had a party. Not a fancy party, just Rosa, Jennifer, Michael and his wife Sarah, and the 4 grandkids ranging from 8 to 16. Rosa had spent all morning cooking her famous tamales, homemade salsa, Spanish rice, and flan for dessert. Jennifer had brought a cake that said, "Welcome home, Rosa," in beautiful script frosting. We gathered in my living room, Rosa's living room now, though she insisted we'd always think of it as mine, and Amanda presented Rosa with the deed to the house and the trust documents. Rosa held that deed like it was made of gold, reading her own name over and over. Senora Dorothy, I promise you I will take care of this house like it's the most precious thing in the world, because it is. It's not just a house. It's your love made into something real that I can touch and live in and share.
My youngest grandson, Tommy, who was 8 and had never really understood what all the fuss was about, tugged on Rosa's sleeve. Miss Rosa, does this mean you're going to live here forever? Rosa knelt down to his level. Do you want me to live here forever? Tommy nodded vigorously. Yeah, you make the best cookies and you always have time to color with me, and you know all the good hiding spots for hide and seek. Then yes, mijo, I'm going to live here forever. And you can come visit whenever you want, and we'll color and play hide and seek and make cookies together. The party lasted until almost 10 o'clock, with the kids running around the backyard while the adults sat on the porch talking and laughing. At one point, I looked around at all these people I loved. my children who had remembered how to be present, my grandchildren who were making new memories, Rosa, who had become the heart of our family in ways I never could have imagined. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years: complete contentment. But honey, the story gets even better. About 2 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen. I still thought of it as my kitchen, even though Rosa owned the house now, having my morning coffee when Rosa came in with an envelope and a nervous expression. "Dorothy, I need to show you something," she said, sitting down across from me. "I got a letter from my son Carlos yesterday." Carlos was her older son, the one who graduated from engineering school. He'd been working for a construction company in Memphis, saving money and gaining experience with plans to eventually start his own business. Rosa pulled out the letter and handed it to me. "Mama, this letter began, 'I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've been offered a job here in Nashville. It's with a big firm that does commercial construction, and the pay is almost double what I'm making now. But the best part is that I could move back home and help you take care of Miss Dorothy. I know how much she means to you, and I've been worried about you trying to handle everything by yourself, especially now that she's been so sick. Would it be okay if I moved back? I have enough saved for a down payment on a little house nearby." Y'all, I looked up at Rosa, and she was crying again. "He wants to come home," she whispered. "He wants to help take care of you." "Rosa, honey, this is wonderful news. Why are you crying?" "Because I don't want you to think I told him about the inheritance. I swear to you, Dorothy, I never mentioned the house or the money or any of it. He doesn't know. This letter is just about Carlos wanting to be close to family." I stood up and went around the table to hug her. "Sweet Rosa, even if you had told him, it wouldn't matter. But the fact that you didn't, the fact that he's making this decision based purely on love and concern, just proves once again that you raised your boys the same way you've lived your life, with integrity and kindness." Carlos moved back to Nashville 6 weeks later, and within a month, he'd found a perfect little cottage just 3 blocks away from us. The first time Jennifer met him, she called me that evening laughing. "Mama, now I understand where Rosa gets her warmth from. That young man spent 20 minutes asking me about my kids and my job and acting genuinely interested in my answers. It runs in the family." Carlos started coming by every evening after work to check on both Rosa and me. He'd sit on the porch with us, telling stories about his construction projects, asking about my health, helping with any household repairs that needed doing. Sometimes he'd bring his guitar and play old songs in Spanish while Rosa sang along in her beautiful voice. One evening, about 3 months after Carlos had moved back, we were all sitting on the porch after dinner when Jennifer's car pulled into the driveway. She got out with a bottle of champagne and a huge grin on her face. "What are we celebrating?" I called out to her. "I got the promotion," she shouted back, practically skipping up the front steps. "Senior marketing director, 20% raise, and the best part? I get to work from home 3 days a week now, which means more time with you, Mama." Carlos jumped up to give her a congratulatory hug, and Rosa started clapping her hands with excitement. We popped that champagne right there on the porch and toasted Jennifer's success as the sun was setting over Nashville. "You know what this means," she said, settling into the porch swing next to me. "It means I can help out more, with Mama's appointments, with grocery shopping, with anything you need, Rosa. We're all in this together now." And that, sweetie, is exactly what happened. Over the next several months, we all settled into a routine that felt like the family I'd always dreamed of having. Jennifer came by most mornings before work to have coffee with Rosa and me.
Michael started bringing the grandkids over every Saturday for what he called Grandma and Rosa's cooking lessons. Carlos became like the son I never had, always willing to help with anything that needed fixing or moving or organizing. But the most beautiful part was watching Rosa bloom in ways I'd never seen her before. She'd always been kind and generous, but now she had security for the first time in her adult life. She didn't have to work 3 jobs anymore. The trust provided enough income that she only needed to work part-time at her favorite job, cleaning for a pediatrician's office, where all the staff appreciated her and treated her well. With her extra time, Rosa started volunteering at the community center, teaching English as a second language to new immigrants. She joined the church choir. Turned out that beautiful voice I heard on my porch was good enough for solos. She even started taking art classes at the community college, something she dreamed about doing for years but never had the time or money for. One day, about 8 months after Rosa had officially inherited the house, I was napping in my chair when I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. I could hear Rosa talking to someone, but it wasn't Jennifer or Carlos. Curious, I made my way slowly to the kitchen doorway and peeked in. Rosa was sitting at the kitchen table with a young woman I didn't recognize, probably mid-20s, with tear-stained cheeks and a baby on her hip. Rosa was holding the woman's hands and speaking to her in gentle Spanish, occasionally switching to English. "Rosa?" I said quietly, not wanting to interrupt, but wanting to make sure everything was okay. Rosa looked up and smiled. "Dorothy, this is Maria. She's new to the neighborhood and she's having some troubles. I was just making her some tea and telling her about the resources at the community center." Maria looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "I'm sorry for bothering you, Senora. I didn't know where else to go." I came into the kitchen and sat down at the table with them. "Honey, you're not bothering anyone. What's wrong?" Through tears and broken English, with Rosa translating when needed, Maria's story came out. She'd come from Guatemala with her husband and baby 6 months ago. Her husband had found work in construction, but last week he'd been injured on the job, and the company was refusing to pay for medical care or compensation. They were behind on rent, running out of money, and Maria was terrified they'd end up homeless. Rosa had been holding the baby while Maria talked, rocking him gently and making soft cooing sounds. "Dorsey," she said, "I was thinking maybe Carlos could talk to his boss about Maria's husband, and maybe we could help them with groceries this week, just until they get back on their feet." Y'all, sitting there in that kitchen, watching Rosa comfort this frightened young mother and immediately thinking of ways to help, I felt such a surge of pride and gratitude.
This was exactly what I'd hoped would happen when I'd made the decision to leave Rosa the house. Not just that she'd be secure, but that her security would allow her to help others the way she'd helped me. "Of course we can help," I said immediately. "And Rosa, this house has always been open to people who needed a safe place. That doesn't change now that it's your house." Maria started crying harder, but now they were tears of relief instead of despair. "Gracias, señoras, gracias." Rosa stood up and started pulling things out of the pantry. Canned goods, rice, pasta, anything that would help feed a family for a week. "Maria, you take this home tonight. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to some other families in the neighborhood, people who can help you find resources and maybe some work for when your husband is better." I watched Rosa fill 2 grocery bags with food, then add diapers and baby formula from the supplies she kept for when my grandchildren visited. This woman who had grown up in poverty, who had worked multiple jobs just to survive, who had only recently gained financial security, was giving away groceries without a second thought because someone else needed help. After Maria left with her baby and bags of food, Rosa and I sat back down at the kitchen table. "Rosa, honey, you amaze me," I said. "You've been comfortable for less than a year, and you're already using your stability to help others." Rosa shrugged,
as if what she'd just done was nothing remarkable. "Dorothy, when you have been hungry, you cannot see someone else hungry without helping. When you have been afraid about money and housing, you cannot see someone else afraid without sharing what you have. This is just what you do." "No, sweetie, this is what you do. This is who you are, and it's exactly why you deserved everything I left you." That evening, when Jennifer stopped by after work, I told her about Maria and Rosa's immediate response to help. Jennifer listened thoughtfully, then said, "Mama, I have an idea. What if we set up a small fund, maybe through the church or the community center, to help families like Maria's? I could contribute regularly, and I bet Michael would too. We could call it the Dorothy Williams Family Support Fund." I was so touched by the idea that I started crying. "Baby girl, that's beautiful. But if we're going to name it after anyone, it should be Rosa. She's the one who'll be running it, finding the families who need help, making sure the aid gets to the right people." "The Rosa Martinez Family Support Fund," Jennifer said, trying out the name. "I like it. Rosa, what do you think?" Rosa had been quiet during this conversation, but now she looked up with tears in her eyes. "I think it would be an honor, but Dorothy, it should have your name too, the Dorothy and Rosa Family Support Fund, because none of this would be possible without your generosity, and I want people to know that helping families was your idea too." And that, honey, is how we ended up running a small family assistance program out of my kitchen table. Well, Rose's kitchen table now, but you know what I mean. Jennifer set up the financial structure through her bank, Michael helped with the legal paperwork, Carlos spread the word through his construction contacts, and Rosa and I interviewed families and decided how to distribute the help. Within 6 months, we'd helped 12 families with everything from rent money to medical bills to job placement. Rosa had a natural gift for connecting with people and understanding their real needs, not just their immediate crises. She'd helped one woman learn English well enough to get a better job, connected another family with a lawyer who could help them with immigration paperwork, and even organized a neighborhood potluck dinner where longtime residents could meet and support newer immigrants. 1 year after Rosa had legally inherited the house, we decided to have another party, not just to celebrate the anniversary, but to celebrate everything that had grown out of that original decision. We invited everyone who had been touched by our little support network, Maria and her family, whose husband was back to work and doing well, the Nguyen family, who Rosa had helped when their restaurant was struggling, old Mrs. Patterson down the street, who'd been afraid to leave her house after a break-in until Rosa started checking on her daily and organized a neighborhood watch program. The house was full of voices in English and Spanish and Vietnamese, children running around the backyard, adults sharing food and stories and laughter. I sat in my favorite chair in the living room, watching it all unfold around me, and felt such overwhelming gratitude for the way everything had worked out. Jennifer came over and perched on the arm of my chair. "Mama, are you getting tired? Do you need to rest?" I shook my head. "Baby girl, I've never felt more alive. Look around this room. Look at all these people whose lives are better because of the decision I made. Look at Rosa glowing with happiness and purpose. Look at your children learning that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing to care for each other." Jennifer followed my gaze around the room, then smiled. "You know what, Mama? I used to think inheritance was about money and property, but watching this past year, I realized you gave Rosa something much more valuable than a house and savings account. You gave her the gift of knowing she mattered, that her kindness was seen and valued. And in return, she's given all of us the gift of understanding what real family looks like." "That's exactly right, honey. And the most beautiful part is that it keeps growing. Every person Rosa helps, every family that gets back on their feet, every child who grows up seeing adults from different backgrounds working together, it all ripples out in ways we'll never even know about." Michael appeared with his youngest daughter, Sophie, who was now 9 and had appointed herself Rosa's official helper in all cooking projects. "Grandma Dorothy, Miss Rosa is teaching me how to make flan for dessert. She says I'm getting really good at cracking eggs without getting shell pieces in the bowl."
That's wonderful, sweetheart. Are you having fun? Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Miss Rosa says cooking is more than just food. It's about showing people you love them by making something special with your own hands. She says that's why abuela's recipes are so important, because they carry love from one generation to the next. Y'all, hearing my granddaughter repeat Rosa's wisdom about cooking and love and family tradition, I felt such a deep sense of peace. This child was learning lessons about generosity and cultural respect and the true meaning of family that she'd carry with her for the rest of her life. As the party wound down and people started heading home, Rosa came over to where I was still sitting in my chair. She knelt down beside me and took my hands in hers. Dorothy, I need to tell you something. When I first came to this country 20 years ago, I used to dream about what success would look like. I thought it would be having enough money saved to bring my mother from El Salvador for a visit, or buying my boys everything they needed without worrying about the cost, or maybe owning a little house someday. She paused, looking around the room that was slowly emptying as families gathered their children and said their goodbyes. But I never dreamed about this. I never imagined that success could mean having a family that chose me, a community that trusts me to help solve problems, a home where people from all backgrounds feel welcome. I never imagined that I could matter this much to this many people. I squeezed her hands. Sweet Rosa, you've always mattered this much.
The only thing that changed is that now you have the security and support to let your light shine as bright as it was meant to shine. But that light only shines because you saw it first, because you chose to value kindness over convenience, presence over presence, chosen family over blood family, when blood family forgot how to show love. Rosa's voice was getting thick with emotion. Dorothy, you saved my life in ways you'll never fully understand. Honey, we saved each other. You gave me purpose and companionship when I thought my useful days were behind me. You showed me that family can grow and change and become more beautiful than anything you originally planned. The last guest left around 9 o'clock, and Rosa, Jennifer, and I sat on the porch in our favorite spots. Rosa in the rocking chair that used to be mine, Jennifer on the swing, me in the cushioned chair that Carlos had bought specially for my back problems. The autumn air was crisp but not cold, and the street lights were just coming on. Mama, Jennifer said quietly, how are you feeling? Health-wise, I mean. It's been over a year since the heart attacks. I considered the question carefully. My body was certainly weaker than it had been 2 years ago. I moved more slowly, tired more easily, had to be careful about stairs and long walks, but my spirit felt stronger than it had in decades. Physically, I'm an old woman with a tired heart, I said honestly, but emotionally, spiritually, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Rosa reached over and patted my arm. Dr. Patterson says your last checkup was very encouraging. Your blood pressure is stable, your heart rhythm is good, and you're maintaining your weight. I think having purpose keeps me going. Helping with the support fund, watching our extended family grow, seeing you bloom into the community leader you were always meant to be, it gives me reasons to wake up excited about each new day. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then said, Mama, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you have any regrets about the will? About choosing Rosa over Michael and me? I looked at both women, Jennifer, my biological daughter, who had learned to truly see me again, and Rosa, my chosen daughter, who had never stopped seeing me and felt nothing but peace about my decision. Baby girl, I didn't choose Rosa over you and Michael. I chose to reward the love I was receiving with the love I had to give. But the beautiful thing is that choice brought all of us closer together instead of driving us apart.
You and Michael are better children to me now than you were before because you understand that relationships require intention and effort. Rosa is thriving in ways that make my heart sing. Our whole family, blood and chosen, is stronger and more connected." "So, no regrets?" Jennifer pressed. "None whatsoever. The only thing I would change is that I wish I'd made the decision sooner so we could have had even more time to build this beautiful life together." Rosa stood up and stretched. "I'm going to make some chamomile tea. Does anyone else want some?" While Rosa was inside making tea, Jennifer moved from the swing to the chair next to mine. "Mama, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. Watching you and Rosa this past year, seeing how you built a friendship based on mutual respect and genuine care has changed the way I approach all my relationships. I'm a better wife, a better mother, a better friend because of the example you set." "How so, baby girl?" "I pay attention now. Really pay attention. When David tells me about his day at work, I listen to understand, not just to wait for my turn to talk. When the kids tell me about school or friends or problems, I ask questions that show I care about their feelings, not just their grades or behavior. When my friends are going through difficult times, I show up in practical ways instead of just texting, thinking of you." I felt my eyes filling with tears. "That makes me so happy, Jennifer. You were always a loving person. You just got busy and forgot how to show it effectively." I learned from watching Rosa. The way she anticipates your needs, remembers details about your preferences, follows up on things you mention in passing. Those aren't grand gestures, but they're the building blocks of real intimacy and care. Rosa came back with 3 steaming mugs of tea, and we sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of the neighborhood, dogs barking in the distance, children's voices from a few houses down, the gentle creak of the porch swing moving in the breeze. Finally, Rosa broke the silence. "I have something I want to share with both of you, something I've been thinking about for weeks but wasn't sure how to bring up." Jennifer and I both turned to look at her expectantly. "I want to write a book," Rosa said, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke, "about immigration, about finding family in unexpected places, about how kindness can transform lives in ways we never imagined. Our story, but also the stories of the families we've helped, the connections we've made, the community we've built." "Rosa, that's a wonderful idea. You're a natural storyteller, and you have such important things to say." I nodded enthusiastically. "Honey, you absolutely should write that book. But you know what? You shouldn't write it alone. This story belongs to all of us. You, me, Jennifer, Michael, Carlos, everyone who's been part of building this chosen family. What if we wrote it together?" Rosa's eyes lit up. "A collaboration? That would be even better. Jennifer, you have the writing skills from your marketing work, and Dorothy, you have the teaching experience to help organize the material. We could interview everyone who's been part of the support fund, get their perspectives on how helping and being helped change their lives. I love it, Jennifer. We could alternate chapters, one from each of our perspectives, showing how the same events look different depending on our roles and backgrounds." Over the next hour, we planned out our book project with growing excitement. Rosa would focus on the immigration experience and the practical aspects of building community support networks. I would write about aging, family relationships, and the importance of making intentional choices about legacy. "What should we call it?" Rosa asked. I thought for a moment. "How about The Will to Love, a story of chosen family? It plays on the legal document that started everything, but it's really about the will, the intention to choose love over obligation, presence over presence, action over empty words." Both women smiled and nodded. "Perfect," Jennifer said. "The Will to Love it is." That night, after Jennifer went home and Rose and I had finished our bedtime routines, I lay in my bed thinking about how extraordinary my life had become. 2 years ago, I'd been a lonely widow, seeing my children only when they needed something, spending most of my days watching television and feeling invisible. Tonight, I was part of a thriving chosen family, running a community support network and planning to co-author a book about the power of intentional love.
6 months later, our book was finished. We'd interviewed over 30 people whose lives had intersected with ours through the support fund, the community center, Rosa's volunteer work, and our extended chosen family. The stories were incredible. Tales of resilience, transformation, the ripple effects of simple acts of kindness. The launch party was held at the community center with people from all parts of our Nashville community coming to celebrate. Maria, whose family we'd helped that first day, brought her husband and baby, who was walking now and getting into everything. The Nguyen family brought spring rolls and Vietnamese coffee. Mrs. Patterson brought her famous pound cake and a friend she'd met through the neighborhood watch program Rosa had organized. But the most touching moment of the evening came when Carlos stood up to make a speech. 2 years ago, he said, my mother called to tell me that her employer, this wonderful woman named Dorothy, was in the hospital. I was worried about my mom having to handle everything alone, so I started looking for jobs closer to home. What I didn't know was that Dorothy had already made the decision that would change all of our lives. He paused, looking around the room at all the faces, black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old, longtime Americans, and recent immigrants, all connected by the web of relationships that had grown from one elderly woman's decision to reward love with love. Dorothy chose to see my mother not as an employee, but as family. And in doing that, she gave my mother the gift of security, yes, but more importantly, the gift of knowing that her kindness mattered, that her love was valuable enough to be rewarded, that she had worth beyond her ability to clean houses and take care of other people. Carlos's voice was getting thick with emotion. But here's the thing. When you give someone the gift of knowing they matter, they use that knowledge to help other people know they matter too. Every family in this room has been touched by that original decision. Every child here is growing up in a community that's more connected, more supportive, more loving because Dorothy Williams chose Rosa Martinez as her daughter of choice. The applause was thunderous, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I looked around that community center at all these people whose lives had been touched by our story, and I felt such profound gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this moment. Later that evening, back at home, Rosa and I were sitting at the kitchen table with copies of our book spread in front of us. The cover photo showed the three of us, Rosa, Jennifer, and me, sitting on our front porch, all of us smiling, all of us clearly comfortable with each other, all of us obviously family in the deepest sense of the word. Dorothy, Rosa said, running her fingers over the cover, do you think this book might help other people understand that family doesn't have to be limited by blood relationships? I hope so, honey. But even if it just helps one lonely elderly person recognize the love that's already in their life, or inspires one busy adult child to pay better attention to their aging parents, or encourages one immigrant to believe they can build meaningful connections in their new country, it will have been worth writing. Rosa nodded thoughtfully. You know what I hope most? I hope it helps people understand that kindness is an investment that pays dividends you can't even imagine when you first offer it. Like what you mean? I mean, when I first started working for you, I was just trying to do a good job so you'd keep hiring me. I needed the money, and you seemed like a nice lady who deserved good care.
But then I started caring about you as a person, and you started caring about me as a person, and that caring grew into love. And that love created security for me and purpose for you and healing for Jennifer and stability for Carlos and support for dozens of families, and now this book that might help even more people. She paused, looking around the kitchen where we'd shared so many meals and conversations over the past 4 years. All of that came from me just trying to be kind to someone who was paying me to clean her house. It's like kindness is magic. You never know what it's gonna create. Y'all, I had to get up and hug her then because she just articulated something I'd been feeling but couldn't put into words. Kindness is magic. It multiplies and spreads and creates things you never could have planned or imagined. 1 year later, The Will to Love had sold over 50,000 copies and had been featured in magazines, on morning talk shows, and at conferences about aging, immigration, and community building. We'd started getting letters from readers all over the country. Elderly people who had reached out to reconnect with estranged children, adult children who begun spending more intentional time with their aging parents, and immigrants who had found the courage to build deeper connections in their communities, and families who had opened their homes and hearts to chosen family members. But the letter that meant the most to me came from a woman named Grace in Portland, Oregon. She wrote, "Dear Dorothy, Rosa, and Jennifer, I read your book 3 months ago, right after my 70th birthday. I was feeling invisible and forgotten, much like Dorothy described. Your story inspired me to look around my own life for the people who were actually showing me love instead of focusing on the family members who had become too busy for me. I realized that my neighbor, Keiko, who brought me vegetables from her garden every week and always stopped to chat, was demonstrating more care than my own daughter, who called dutifully once a month, but never really listened to my answers when she asked how I was doing. I've rewritten my will to leave my house to Keiko, and I've started a weekly coffee group for elderly women in my neighborhood. We're calling ourselves the Chosen Family Club, and we're creating the community we need instead of waiting for someone else to provide it. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to build the family your heart needs." Reading that letter aloud to Rosa and Jennifer in our kitchen, I felt such overwhelming joy and gratitude. Our story had inspired someone else to create their own chosen family, and that family would probably inspire others and on in an endless chain of intentional love. Now, sweetie, I'm coming to the end of my story, but it's not a sad ending. It's actually the most hopeful ending I could imagine. As I'm telling you this, I'm 84 years old and my heart is still weak, but I'm still here. Still living in this house with Rosa, still helping families through our support fund, still being visited daily by Jennifer and weekly by Michael and his family. Still watching Carlos build his construction business and find love with a wonderful woman named Angela who fits into our chosen family like she was always meant to be here. But more importantly, I'm still needed, still valued, still seen as a person with wisdom to offer and love to give, not just as an elderly woman taking up space and resources. Rosa and I have become local celebrities of sorts, speaking at churches and community centers about the power of intergenerational friendship and chosen family. We helped establish similar support networks in 3 other Nashville neighborhoods, and we're working with the city to develop a formal program matching isolated elderly residents with immigrant families who could benefit from cultural exchange and mutual support. But you know what makes me happiest of all? Is watching the children in our extended family grow up understanding that love is a choice, that family is defined by commitment rather than genetics, that kindness is the most powerful force in the world.
Jennifer's kids, now teenagers, volunteer with our support fund and speak fluent Spanish thanks to Rosa's patient teaching. Carlos and Angela's new baby will grow up bilingual and bicultural, learning about both Salvadoran traditions and Tennessee customs. The children of the families we've helped come to our holiday celebrations and birthday parties, creating a community where differences in language, culture, and background are celebrated rather than just tolerated. These children are growing up knowing that an older American woman and a middle-aged Salvadoran immigrant can become mother and daughter by choice. They're learning that a house becomes a home when it's filled with people who choose to care for each other. They're seeing that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of your relationships and the impact of your kindness. And honey, that's the legacy I wanted to leave. Not money sitting in a bank account, not a house that would be sold to pay for someone else's vacation or new car, but a living, breathing example of what becomes possible when you choose love over obligation, when you reward presence with presence, when you understand that the best inheritance you can leave is a world made more loving by your choices. So when people ask me if I have any regrets about leaving everything to Rosa instead of my biological children, I tell them to look around. Look at Jennifer, who has become the daughter I always hoped she could be, not because she's inheriting money, but because she learned what love actually looks like. Look at Michael, who brings his children over every weekend, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely enjoys spending time with his chosen grandmother Rosa and wants his kids to learn from her wisdom. Look at Rosa, glowing with the confidence that comes from knowing your kindness has been seen and valued and rewarded. Look at this house, still full of the love and laughter it was always meant to hold. But now that love includes people from El Salvador and Vietnam and Tennessee and every corner of the world. Look at the dozens of families who have stable housing and food security because someone decided their struggles mattered. Look at the children growing up, understanding that family is bigger and more beautiful than anything defined by blood alone. That's what happens when you choose to reward love with love, sweetie. That's what happens when you decide that your final act of agency in this world will be a celebration of the people who actually showed up for your life instead of the people who just expected to benefit from your death. Y'all, I started this story in that hospital room at Vanderbilt Medical Center with my daughter waving my will around like it was evidence of my mental incompetence. I was dying, alone, feeling invisible and forgotten by the very people I'd spent my whole life loving. But honey, that wasn't the end of my story. That was the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of my entire life. Because when you're brave enough to choose love over expectation, when you're willing to build family instead of just accepting the one you were born into, when you understand that kindness creates more kindness and generosity creates more generosity, then even dying becomes just another opportunity to plant seeds of love that will bloom long after you're gone. And that's exactly what happened. What started as one old woman's decision to reward genuine care with genuine gratitude has become a network of chosen families, a support system that has helped hundreds of people, a book that has inspired thousands more, and a living example that love, real, intentional, active love, is the most powerful force in the world. So, sweetie, if you're listening to this story and you recognize yourself in any of it, whether you're an elderly person feeling forgotten or an adult child who's gotten too busy to really see their aging parents, or someone who's found genuine friendship in unexpected places, or anyone who's ever wondered what it means to build family instead of just being assigned one, I want you to know that it's never too late to choose love. It's never too late to pay attention to who's actually showing up in your life instead of who you think should be showing up.
It's never too late to reward presence with presence, kindness with kindness, genuine care with genuine gratitude. It's never too late to build the family your heart needs instead of just accepting the family genetics gave you. And most importantly, it's never too late to understand that the most beautiful legacy you can leave isn't money or property or even memories. The most beautiful legacy is a world made more loving because you were in it. Relationships made deeper because you chose depth over convenience. Families made stronger because you understood that love is a verb, not just a feeling. That hospital room at Vanderbilt Medical Center where my daughter grabbed my will and made every nurse stop to stare, that was the moment my real life began, because that was the moment I stopped apologizing for my choices and started celebrating them. That was the moment I stopped trying to earn love from people who had forgotten how to give it and started appreciating the love I was already receiving from someone who had never forgotten how to show it. And honey, if an old woman with a tired heart can build a beautiful chosen family in her 80s, if a Salvadoran immigrant working 3 jobs can become the heart of a community support network, if a busy daughter can learn to truly see her mother again, then anyone can choose love. Anyone can build family. Anyone can create the relationships their heart needs instead of just accepting the ones they were handed. So that's my story, sweetie. That's how a will that was supposed to be about death became a testament to life. That's how a document meant to distribute property became a catalyst for building community. That's how one old woman's last act of rebellion became dozens of people's first experience of unconditional love. And you know what the most beautiful part is? This story isn't over. Rosa is only 61 years old, with decades ahead of her to keep building love and community. Jennifer's children are growing up understanding that family is a choice and kindness is a superpower. The families we've helped are helping other families, creating an endless chain of support and care. So when I finally do leave this world, whenever that may be, I'll go knowing that I used my time here to plant seeds of love that will keep blooming long after I'm gone. I'll go knowing that my last will and testament wasn't just a legal document. It was a love letter to everyone who ever showed me that family is about choosing each other every single day in all the small ways that matter. And that, y'all, is how you turn a will into a way of life. That's how you turn inheritance into a legacy of love. That's how you make sure that even death becomes just another opportunity to choose family, to reward love, and to leave the world a little more beautiful than you found it. Because, honey, at the end of the day, we're all going to be remembered not for what we accumulated, but for what we gave. Not for who we were related to, but for who we chose to love. And thanks to Rosa Martinez, thanks to my children learning to love better, thanks to all the families we've helped and all the community we've built, I know that when my time comes, I'll be leaving behind more love than I could have ever imagined when I first sat down to write that will. That's the real inheritance, sweetie. That's the legacy that matters. That's what happens when you have the will to love.